Today at 6, a man is charged with plotting to kidnap and murder the TV presenter Holly Willoughby. ITV said the news had come as a huge shock and that it's offering full support to the presenter and her family.
Welcome to Scotland's newest MP, Michael Shanks!
Labour wins big in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election. Keir Starmer says it shows the country wants change. We'll look at what it means with our editors, James Cook in Rutherglen and Chris Mason. Emotional goodbyes. We speak to staff who've worked at Wilko for decades as the last shops close for good this weekend. A tale of survival, how this tropical turtle overcame being washed up in the Inner Hebrides, thousands of miles from home.
And it's going to be a weekend of autumn weather extremes. Unusually warm for many, but exceptionally wet for some. We'll have all the details.
On BBC London, it's set to be a sunny few days, but warnings that this weekend's predicted temperature is far out of normal ranges, raising further concerns about climate change.
Hello and welcome to the BBC News at 6. A man has appeared in court charged with plotting to kidnap and murder the TV presenter Holly Willoughby. Gavin Plum, who's 36 and from Harlow in Essex, was remanded in custody. Holly Willoughby didn't appear on yesterday's edition of This Morning. ITV said it's providing full support to her and her family at a very distressing time. Our correspondent Charlotte Gallagher reports.
Hi, good morning and welcome to your Wednesdays this morning.
Holly Willoughby, one of the most recognisable faces on British television. This was her on Wednesday during her last appearance on This Morning. She was due to return the next day, but was replaced at the last minute by Alison Hammond. Now we know why. An alleged plot to kidnap and murder the television presenter. Gavin Plum from Harlow in Essex appeared in court today. The 36-year-old, who once appeared on the BBC talking about weight loss, is accused of soliciting to commit murder and incitement to commit kidnap.
Gavin Plum was allegedly formulating a plan with another person who was going to travel from America to the UK next week in order to take part in the crimes. Chelmsford Magistrates Court also heard that Mr. Plum was assembling a restraint and kidnap kit. He was remanded into custody.
Today, Holly Willoughby's This Morning co-stars have been speaking about the case.
We're obviously all shocked to hear the news and we want to send our love and biggest hugs to Holly.
It has been a difficult year for Holly Willoughby, professionally and personally. She was forced to defend herself after being accused of skipping the queue to pay her respects to Queen Elizabeth at Westminster Hall. Then her co-host, Philip Schofield, quit in May after admitting a relationship with a younger, more junior colleague. Holly Willoughby's own future on This Morning was also questioned. Tonight, the presenter is reportedly under police guard at her family home in London.
Obviously, Jane, this is a very upsetting and worrying time for Holly Willoughby and her family and also her colleagues at This Morning. No one would have expected when she missed the show on Thursday that this would have been the reason. ITV has said the news has come as a huge shock and it's doing everything it can to support Holly Willoughby in this very distressing time.
Charlotte Gallagher, thank you. Labour has been celebrating after a resounding victory in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election. The party's candidate, Michael Shanks, won more than 58% of the vote. As you can see, more than double that for the SNP's Katie Loudon, who came second. It meant that Labour saw a larger than expected swing of more than 20% from the SNP. The party leader Keir Starmer told local campaigners they'd blown the doors off. Our Scotland editor James Cook is in Rutherglen tonight. James.
Well, Jane, many things went wrong for the Scottish National Party here. There was concern, even anger among voters about the behaviour of the former MP Margaret Ferrier, who was thrown out of the party and Parliament for breaking lockdown law. Voters also expressed concerns about the SNP's stewardship of public services, as well as the Conservatives' handling of the economy. And then there was also that police investigation into the SNP's funding and finances. But this is not just about the SNP's failure here. It was also about Labour's thumping success.
Michael Shanks, Scottish Labour Party, 17,840.
Labour didn't just win here, they triumphed. The SNP didn't just lose, they were trounced.
My campaign has been focused on offering people here a fresh start, a break away from the divisiveness and distraction of two failing governments, and to give a voice to those who are too often voiceless in our society.
A few short hours and several gallons of coffee later, the sun was shining on Sir Keir Starmer, Labour jumping for joy.
When I left here a week ago with the team, I said, you've got to win it. You blew the doors off.
There's a real release of pent-up emotion here. These activists have waited a long time for this moment, and he hopes, that he'll be heading to Downing Street eventually as a result of their work. Are you now heading to Downing Street?
Look, we have been on a journey since 2019 to get the Labour Party from our worst election result to a Labour majority. For me, the road always ran through Scotland.
With victory here, Labour now have 2 Scottish seats at Westminster, but they have their eyes on another couple of dozen, at least.
This is a result that suggests that politics in Scotland could be returning to the picture that we had before the 2014 independence referendum. Indeed, if the swings in Rutherglen were to be reflected across Scotland as a whole, Labour would be back to the 40 or so seats that they had in 2010, and the SNP would once again be a rump of just a half a dozen MPs.
And that puts the SNP leader under severe pressure.
So I'm the leader of the SNP. The buck does absolutely stop with me, but I think everybody knows that this particular by-election has some very difficult contextual factors around it. Margaret Ferrier's reckless actions, of course, came up time and time again. And the police investigation, of course, that's engulfed the party over the last few months, again came up on a number of doorsteps.
It was also a terrible by-election for the Conservatives, whose vote simply collapsed.
I think it's very tempting to extrapolate a lot from one single by-election. The general election is quite some way off yet. I think what we saw last night was a continuation of what we've been seeing in Scotland over a few months, actually, and that is coming together of the Unionist vote to stop the SNP being successful.
Can I ask you what you thought of the by-election results?
Yes.
Yeah, really, why?
Yeah, because the SNP have just absolutely ballsed everything up, to be fair. And I think it's good that Labour are back in.
It was predictable. We knew that was going to happen, but no, it doesn't really matter. It's more Tory austerity. It's just that Keir Starmer's come out and said he's going to continue in the same theme as the Tories, so no change there.
So you want independence, but you didn't vote for the SNP. Why?
Because, don't know, they're just a bit of a shambles now. They don't seem to have independence on the agenda type thing. It's just been year after year of, we're going to have a referendum, going to do this, and it just never happened.
Polls suggest the SNP's troubles have not actually affected support for independence, but both Labour and the Tories insist the union is more secure tonight. James Cook, BBC News, Rutherglen.
Well, our political editor, Chris Mason, is with me. So put these results in some perspective then,
Yeah,
Chris.
so 2 facts to start with. Firstly, Labour had an absolutely dire result at the last general election. But also, ever since the Scottish independence referendum back in 2014, Labour have been shrivelled in terms of the number of Westminster seats that they have held, down to next to nothing. And to put that into context, when Labour last won a general election way back in 2005, they won 41 seats in Scotland. But when they lost the general election in 2010, they also had 41. So from Labour's perspective, being competitive in Scotland is a necessary but not sufficient thing for them to be likely to be competitive in a general election. Or to put it another way, unless Labour are competitive in Scotland, winning a general election for them is mighty difficult. And there's the beginnings of evidence here, more than the beginnings, that might be, from their perspective, coming true, that they're back in the game in Scotland.
And that election at some point next year. So where does this leave the major parties?
So firstly, for the SNP, we should say it's a by-election. So there can be over-interpretation here. Shriveled turnout in one corner of Scotland. From the Scottish National Party's perspective, it was grim. There's no doubt it was grim. They have been these giants of Scottish politics for the last 10 years or so, more than that actually, in terms of their dominance at Holyrood. They will worry about what this means come a general election, and also what it means for their very reason for being the cause of independence. The Conservatives, never likely to be competitive in a seat like this, but they did do particularly badly. They'll hope in other parts of Scotland they can be more competitive. But what will worry them is the potential rise of Labour in Scotland for all the reasons that we were just discussing. So that's what will really concern Conservative MPs across the UK, who will look at this and think, there's the opinion polls, yes, but this was a real result, real votes in a real ballot box, showing Labour doing better than some opinion polls have suggested. All that said, from Labour's perspective, they have that colossal mountain to climb come the next general election. It's still very steep, even with results like this.
Chris, thank you very much. Chris Mason. NHS England says there were nearly 120,000 operations and appointments cancelled because of the doctors' strikes this week. Consultants and junior doctors walked out from early Monday morning until early Thursday in their row about pay. The total number of cancellations since action began by health unions is now 1.13 million. Every year, thousands of people in England and Wales are accused of crimes of which they're later acquitted. While their names may be cleared, they're often left emotionally and financially devastated. And some of those who stand trial are there because of claims made about them that are untrue. Now, one of the country's most senior legal figures is calling for more action against those who make false and malicious accusations. Nick Garnett reports.
Accused of crimes she didn't commit.
I can remember every single moment from the trial. It's etched on my brain.
Rebecca Whitehurst says the allegations she faced were never fully investigated.
There's no case of innocent until proven guilty, I don't think.
The cases could be dealt with.
Each year, thousands of people go to trial accused of crimes and are found not guilty. Sir Richard Henriquez wrote a high-profile report on the impact of false and deliberate allegations.
It's worse than burglary. It's a very, very bad assault upon a fellow human being and should be visited with a criminal sanction.
Rebecca was a teacher accused of sexual activity and communications with one of her students. She was shown pages of texts the police said she'd sent.
I saw the evidence and I used to think that evidence meant proof. I now understand it doesn't mean that at all. It was salacious messages, essentially, that were purportedly from me. But it was just so obvious to me that they weren't right.
It took Rebecca and her husband months of research to prepare for the trial. They brought in forensic and legal experts to help build their case. The date of the trial arrived, and for Rebecca, reality hit home.
It was about halfway through the trial I realised, oh my God, those 12 people in the jury, they don't know me from Adam. I'm just a face sitting behind a perspex screen. They don't know anything about me.
The jury came back and found her not guilty of all 3 charges.
Good job. I could have, in theory, been sent to prison for 14 years. The thought of that is just horrific. Sorry, I'll compose myself.
But in British law, no one is ever described as being innocent.
But you've still only been found not guilty.
I was unanimously found not guilty in the briefest amount of time possible. For me, I take that.
Her accuser has lifelong anonymity because the charges related to sex abuse.
So for you, what was the cost of innocence?
Financially, it's been the best part of £50,000. You can apply to have some costs refunded, and that did happen.
Because of her household income, Rebecca didn't qualify for legal aid.
Come on, baby.
The government says it plans to make everyone eligible for help with Crown Court costs within the next 2 years. But the fear is this won't solve the problem.
Those who undertake legally aided work are not financed to the same degree. They're not able to provide the same degree of service. There is a real danger of a miscarriage of justice. That is plainly a weakness in our system.
And it's also weaknesses in the system that can affect victims, especially those of sexual crime. The number of cases that actually make it to court is tiny compared to the number of allegations that are made to the police.
The stress has been too much. This has been 3 years of my life.
1 year on, Rebecca is still waiting for help after being diagnosed with PTSD by her doctor.
The cost emotionally, I don't want to allow it to take up any more of my time because I think I deserve a life.
What does the future hold for you?
I'd like to do something to support people who've been through this sort of situation if I can. Good girl.
And to break down the stigma that surrounds those accused of crimes they didn't commit. Nick Garnett, BBC News.
And you can see more about Rebecca's story in the documentary The Cost of Innocence, available now on the BBC iPlayer. The Time's just coming up to 16 minutes past 6, our top story tonight. A man has appeared in court charged with plotting to kidnap and murder the TV presenter Holly Willoughby. Still to come on the programme, we'll be looking ahead to a big weekend of action in the Rugby World Cup.
On BBC London, hospitalisations for allergies are on the rise. 2 London specialists issue new advice on reducing risk. And it was once nicknamed the Wobbly Bridge. Now it's being closed for repairs to avoid a repeat of the problem.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to a jailed Iranian human rights activist. Narges Mohammadi has been honoured for her fight against the oppression of women in Iran, where she's played a leading role in criticising the mandatory wearing of hijabs for women. Caroline Hawley has this report.
Narges Mohammadi is a woman, a human rights advocate and a freedom fighter. Her brave struggle has come with tremendous personal cost. Altogether, the regime has arrested her 13 times, convicted her 5 times, and sentenced her to a total of 31 years in prison and 154 lashes. Ms. Mohammadi is still in prison as I speak.
She hasn't seen her husband and children, now in exile in Paris, in years. Her son told the BBC she's always in his heart.
I was just happy and proud of my mom, just like I'm always, like yesterday and the day before that. This award belongs to Iranian people.
The Nobel Committee said the prize was also for the hundreds of thousands of Iranians who've demonstrated against the theocratic regime's oppression against women. This uprising, spearheaded by women, began last September after the death in police custody of a young woman detained for allegedly not wearing her headscarf properly. 20,000 people were detained in a brutal crackdown, which Narges Mohammadi condemned from behind bars. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, who was held with her, welcomed the award, saying it was for all women facing injustice. BBC Persian has been monitoring the wider response on social media to today's announcement.
After a year of protests, and according to right groups, over 500 people were killed, bad news after bad news. So this Nobel Prize was the first piece of good news that Iranian heard over a year. And that is probably going to embolden Iranian women in their fight for democracy and freedom.
But the fate of this 16-year-old girl underlines the frightening reality for women taking a stand in Iran. Earlier this week, she bravely tried to get on the Tehran metro with her hair uncovered. Allegedly beaten by Iran's morality police, she's now in a coma. The awarding of the Nobel Peace Prize to Narges Mohammadi sends a very strong message that the world is watching the Iranian regime. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
A 10-year-old boy has been killed in a Russian missile attack on an apartment block in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv. The strike came just hours after a separate attack on the nearby village of Wrotza, leaving 52 people dead, including children. The victims had been attending a wake for a Ukrainian soldier. Local officials say every family in the village has lost loved ones. We'll have a report from Wrotza on the BBC News at 10. Wilko stores up and down the country have seen some emotional goodbyes over the last few weeks as they closed their doors for good. The homewares chain, which has about 12,500 staff, went into administration in August. By Sunday evening, they'll all have gone. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports from one branch in Leicester, the city where the chain was founded.
When you've worked together for many years, the last day on the shop floor isn't easy.
Because it's a family. It's my extended family. Been here a long time, loved it. I thought we'd be saved. Everybody thought we'd be saved.
£1 cake tin, sir.
Now everything has to go, serving customers right to the end.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Some have come with gifts.
She made my shopping trips happy with a smile. Such a sad day.
Hundreds have left messages. This tribute board, at least, will survive, heading to a local museum. Staff are recording their own memories too.
A long farewell, au revoir, Wiedersehen.
Just like Wilko workers up and down the country. Here's the team at the distribution centre, going out in style. Back in Leicester, meet two workers with nearly a century at Wilko between them. Jan even worked with the founder.
The good old days.
The good old days.
Cheap and cheerful, that was our name.
Yeah.
We learned how to trade aggressively, just like J.K. Wilkinson, and we had the pleasure of working with him. Wilko's has been my life, and I joined it when I was 18, and I'm still here now on this very last day.
It's been our lives, and you know, it's been, we grew up with people, we've met people, we've learnt from people. It's been a fabulous ride, but the ride's coming to an end now. You know, we want to go out with a big smile and to say goodbye, and people will remember you, and thank you, yeah.
And that's exactly what the team here did as the shutters closed for the last time. Emma Simpson, BBC News, Leicester.
Plaid Cymru has opened its annual conference in Aberystwyth, setting out a vision for a new Wales. In his first conference speech as leader, Pwy ap Iorwerth detailed his plan to lay the foundations for an independent Wales. And he hit out at the record of both Labour and the Conservatives.
Westminster governments, red and blue, have tried and failed. And I tell you, they'll never try hard enough for Wales. Look around you. Do you think this is the best things can get? No, it isn't. And that's why we're determined to build a new Wales.
The Green Party have also opened their conference in Brighton. Their co-leader Carla Denyer says she wants to increase their number of Westminster seats to 4 at the next general election, and promised to give renters a legal right to demand that landlords insulate their homes.
With 4 Green MPs in Parliament, we'll have the voices to call for a nationwide home insulation scheme, not just to lower emissions, but to make people's homes warm in winter and cut their bills for good.
Now, to the story of a tropical turtle washed up thousands of miles from her home waters, malnourished and dehydrated, off the Inner Hebrides. She was named Iona after the island where she was found. And against all the odds, Iona has made another remarkable journey towards recovery. Here's Graham Satchell.
Iona the turtle. These her final moments in captivity before being released into the wild. She is alive today because of the kindness of strangers and has come on a remarkable journey to get to this point. The loggerhead turtle was found in January last year. Covered in sand, she was dehydrated, malnourished, barely alive. Jane Kindlin, who found her, gave her the name Iona. It's the island off the west coast of Scotland where she'd landed. Iona was taken to the Sea Life Centre in Loch Lomond, where a team of experts started her recovery. She was then moved to Scarborough, where she made gradual and steady progress, putting on more than 10 times the weight she had when she was found. On the quayside, time for one last quick clean, before being taken onto a small boat and fitted with a tracking device.
Jump in when everybody's ready.
And then finally, the moment of freedom.
It was a really lovely feeling to see her kind of just go off into the big blue. And I think the biggest thing, I have that apprehension really of kind of what's going to happen to her, where's she going to go now.
Today, thanks to a small army of helpers, she is fully grown and back in the wild. Graham Satchell, BBC News.
Now, the Rugby World Cup hots up this weekend as we find out who'll make it through to the quarterfinals. England and Wales are already through, and the most anticipated clash is between the world's top-rated side, Ireland, and Scotland, who must win to stand a chance of progressing. Our sports correspondent Katie Gornall reports now from Paris.
France and Scotland have a shared history. If you go looking, you can find hints of it on the streets of Paris. Centuries ago, they formed the Old Alliance to help each other in times of war. But here and now, the Scots are facing a very different battle.
It's a massive game for Scotland. This is our World Cup final.
The forwards have to front up and, give ourselves a chance, and we can do it.
If Scotland do pull this off, what kind of atmosphere do you think it'll be like tomorrow?
Oh, it'll be incredible. This place will be going mad. I probably won't go to work on Monday. I'll be in Paris the rest of my life, so fingers crossed that will happen.
And options here.
Scotland's record against Ireland doesn't inspire confidence. Defeat at this year's Six Nations was their 8th in a row against them. For Scotland, something needs to change.
If we lose the game, we're going home, but like I said, we'd been written off. We've faced the top 2 teams in the world, but for us, we're not going to go die wondering.
This game here at the Stade de France has so many permutations in play. For Scotland, they need to win by at least 8 points and stop Ireland from picking up a 4-try bonus point. It means there are several ways that Ireland could lose and still go through, but this team doesn't think about defeat. After smashing through South Africa last time out, Ireland are on a 16-test winning streak, and their Pool B decider will be extra special for Peter O'Mahony, who's set to win his 100th cap. But a note to the media, just don't make a fuss of it.
Oh, I would love to be inside there now, having a cup of tea with the lads. This would be the last place I'd sit in front of, to be honest with you. But, I want to win for the lads at the weekend, that's the main thing.
The odds suggest there's only one outcome on Saturday, but however a place in the knockouts is secured, it certainly won't be dull. Katie Gornall, BBC News, Paris.
And that takes us to a look at the weather back here. Ben Rich is with me. Hi, Ben. Oh, my gosh, as we go into the weekend, what a story of contrasts.
Yeah, absolutely, Janie. If you've been watching our forecast this week, you're probably expecting me to talk about warmth, and I am going to. But I also have to talk about rain, and a lot of rain for some places. In fact, enough, I think, to cause some flooding and disruption. It was pretty wet today in parts of northwest England, but the focus through the weekend turns to some western and central parts of Scotland. This chart shows the rainfall we're expecting to accumulate, well over 100 millimetres in this part of Scotland. No wonder then that the Met Office has issued an amber warning. In the very wettest places, we could see 180 millimetres of rain, especially over high ground, with that risk of flooding and disruption. Already pretty wet, I think, through tonight across parts of southern and central Scotland. Rain too for Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, northern England. That rain tending to shift northwards, but then becoming very, very slow moving. It's a pretty warm night for the time of year for most of us, although quite cold in the far north. That's the theme that we'll take with us into tomorrow. For tomorrow, a bit misty and murky around some of these western coasts, but broadly speaking, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, seeing some hazy sunshine and some warmth. But this picture really tells the story across Scotland. A lot of rain, and have a look at the temperatures. The maximum temperatures, 9 degrees there in Aberdeen. In fact, over the highest ground in Scotland, the very highest ground, something wintry could mix in. Further south, while highs of 24 or 25. Enormous contrast. Now, as we head through Saturday night, the rain will slowly ease off a bit across those central and southern parts of Scotland. Heavier rain drifting across northern Scotland. For Sunday, again, across Northern Ireland, England and Wales, a little bit misty and murky in places first thing. Then we'll see some spells of sunshine. Not quite as warm, still 23, 24 degrees. Temperatures in the north of Scotland all the way up to 12 degrees. Starts warm in the south as we head into next week, but by the end of the week we should have something a little bit more normal for October.
All right, Ben, thank you very much indeed. And that is the news at 6 for tonight. You can keep up to date with all those stories, of course, on our website. And here on BBC One, the news continues. We'll join our colleagues wherever you are this evening. Have a very good evening. Bye-bye.